All right. Hello and welcome back into the Tobacco Road and Abroad podcast. My name's Gareth Parsons, joined by Aiden Moore. Aiden, how are you doing?
I'm doing great today. Great to be here as always. Glad we finally made it to episode two. Not getting taken down, that's always a plus. And we had to edit some stuff last time, but you know what? We're ready to go. We're ready to roll. And I'm excited for today. We've got a good slate of games to talk about in the college world. But as always, we're going to start off with the Carolina Panthers with some breaking news. Gareth, do you want to get into what's been going down with the Panthers?
Sure. I think the elephant in the room that everyone's seen at this point is Andy Dalton has been named the starter for this week's game over Bryce Young. Bryce, he's in his second season, hasn't really been performing. There's been a lot of finger pointing, not from him, but like a lot of finger pointing from the fans, kind of like a who done it, like why is the offense still so bad? Some people are still saying the line, some people are saying the receivers, some people are saying it's Bryce. Some people are just saying, you know what, it's everyone sell the team. Um, it's a whole lot of things, and I just want to start off by saying, Aiden, like, where do you think the issues lie? Is it kind of stemming over from last season? And was it kind of unrealistic for us to expect Canales just to kind of make this 180 turn with like we didn't really give him many moving parts to make this big turnaround?
I could point to a plethora of issues I see with the Panthers right now. Right now, I don't want to put the blame on the O line. I definitely don't want to put it on Bryce Young. I feel like though the O line has improved, Bryce Young is definitely at a weird spot in his career where he just went through the ringer season one. And he's definitely been playing a little bit more gun shy and has been way more really conservative in his movements and is not playing with any aggression. And that's no fault of him. I feel like he just was set up in a system that was horrible last year, and now he is trying to adjust. And this league is brutal and it's tough. And if you're not ready to go 100%, you are going to be eaten alive. And I feel like putting the blame on Bryce Young is not a very nuanced take to have. So I say this benching might be better for Bryce Young's career than most people might realize. If I had to put the blame on anything, I would say probably the management of the Carolina Panthers, but it's still early in the season, so it's hard to see if the coaching staff itself is to blame or if upper management is to blame. I err on the side of upper management. I've been very vocal about my issues with David Tepper, but at the end of the day, you can only do so much when it comes to complaining about the owner of the team. So I just default on upper management, but until anything else is like I can see anything with the coaching staff, I'd say maybe the coaching staff is a little bit lackluster, but there's so many unknown variables right now in this dumpster fire right now that it's hard to point the blame at just one sole individual.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with you. A team can't be this bad and it be just like one person's fault. If you get what I'm saying, like you don't have to try to be this bad, but like you have to try to be this bad. Like which is why I agree with you that it is upper management. I feel like everyone kind of has a part to play in this. I know last season the big like obviously I believe the upper management was the issue last season, but I feel like the big hindrance to the Panthers' success last season was their offensive line. And like you said, there have been some improvements. Bryce Young went from the most sacked, the most pressured, the most knockdown quarterback in the league to I'd say about average this season. Aiden and I did some research just because there's always like those Panthers fans trying to get a rise out of people going, oh, it's the O line, oh, it's Bryce. Yeah, Bryce hasn't played his best, but I wouldn't pin this on him. I will say, like I was bringing up, the offensive line's been better. He's the 10th most sacked quarterback, which, you don't want to be in the top third, but, it's not as bad as some of the Panthers fans on Twitter are saying, like, oh, he's the most sacked quarterback. In terms of being knocked down, which is just like the defense gets to you and makes contact with the quarterback and puts him on his butt, that includes sacks, that includes just getting hit after the play, like after he's released the ball. He's 25th. So like when the defense does get to him, he's not, or the defense isn't necessarily getting to him. I mean, he's 14th in hurries, which, league average, as a Panthers fan, you'd hope, like, as being an NFL fan, you'd hope your team would have, like, the least hurried quarterback because, you want him to make good decisions and you want your line to be good. But I'd say league average for how much blame's being placed on the O line, the fact that Bryce Young's only hurried the league average, like, hurried just meaning he has to speed up his progression and pressure's coming. He has to do something with the ball. And if he's only the 14th most pressured, I think that's kind of an improvement from last year where he was the most hurried quarterback. Would you agree? I know it's only been 2 games,
Yes.
but I feel like that's a stark improvement if he's the league average. Now, granted, have we faced the best defenses in the world the first 2 weeks? No, but I do feel like there's improvement. And one thing, like you said, he's been kind of gun shy. His average yards per attempt is not great. It's like 3 yards. That's not really like that's not what you want from an NFL quarterback. And I know there's been like the de-emphasis on the passing game, and people have been vocal about that. And the passing game's not what it was, and the defenses have just adjusted. Like I know the Patriots aren't a good team either, but with the type of offense that Gerard Mayo has them running, Jacoby Brissett's average depth of targets around the same. But that's the Panthers' offense isn't Gerard Mayo and Dave Canales' offenses are two completely different things. So it's like comparing apples to oranges there. But with how bad we're playing, we cannot have Bryce averaging 3 yards per attempt. And I will say this weekend, he got better. He was over 50% completion. I think he was over 75, but he went for 60 yards?
Yeah, it was definitely like I saw a statistic the other day that he has some of the like he completes the ball, but most of his games end up below the 100-yard mark. And if you're getting high completions with low yardage, that's partially a scheme issue and also a decision-making issue. That it indicates to me that Bryce Young's uh, scared of making the wrong decision, and he's just put in a very awkward position right now. And I know it's never a good sign to be talking about trades with your first round draft pick of the previous year. But I've been seeing the ideas of trading Bryce Young, and I'm not too opposed to it as a Panthers fan. And if I'm Bryce Young, I'm not too opposed to it either, because I feel like there's definitely other schemes in the league that um, Bryce Young could benefit with more. The idea of trading him to the Dolphins is definitely something that I think would be on the table, and I think that would be the dream scenario for Bryce Young. Is a very great offensive scheme, and I feel like the scheme of the Dolphins more mirrors what he was used to in Alabama. A lot of good threats at receiver that he can utilize, and I wouldn't be too opposed to going to the Dolphins if I were Bryce Young, but I don't know what the trades are looking like right now, and if even it's good optics to be trading your first round pick this early in his career. But one thing I want to like point out is the fact that there are like notions that Bryce Young is going to be like uh, probably one of the worst busts in NFL history. The stats would indicate that he is definitely tending towards a bust, but I definitely see a potential where we could see a Geno Smith scenario where Bryce Young could gain traction later on in his career and really pick up steam and uh, get rid of this notion that he's a bust. But right now, Carolina is definitely not a perfect fit for him. And if I'm looking forward to Andy Dalton starting, but I'm not optimistic that this is going to be changing anything. Sometimes just the changing of a quarterback is enough to ignite a spark, but it's a very tough situation at Carolina. We have the privilege of being a sports podcast that is based in Carolina, and our pro team is one of the worst in the leagues. So this is going to be a great first couple episodes where we're just talking over and over again about how this team sucks. So I can't wait for the next, 16 weeks now. Really looking forward to it.
Yeah.
When do the Hurricanes start?
The Hurricanes actually play Tuesday. They play against the Tampa Bay Lightning.
Is that preseason or like the
I believe it's
regular season?
preseason, yeah.
Yeah. So look forward to the next couple of weeks where we will be going in depth on the Carolina Hurricanes.
Oh yeah, no, we will definitely be touching on them. I tend to agree with you that I do think the Dolphins trade, like if it were to happen with Bryce Young, is a good one because they need a quarterback. Skylar Thompson did not look great, but I mean, what do I know? He is a pro quarterback, and I am sitting in a makeshift studio right now doing a podcast.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna go kind of a different direction than when you went with the benching. I honestly don't think it might be a trade. With what Canales has done to revive other quarterbacks' careers, I think he's doing his best to revive Bryce's career, but I think benching Bryce with how bad the line is what's best for him right now. He already had to learn an offense with a really beat up O line last year, and we saw that's my take on why Bryce is playing bad this year is that he learned really bad habits playing with the awful O line last year just because it was injury riddled. And that doesn't inspire confidence. And I think that's why we've seen the gun shyness from him this season. So I think honestly, this benching is not only to teach him the system without, fear of like injury or getting hit and allow him to like be more outgoing, and interceptions in practice don't hurt you as much in games. And I know people would probably say, Garrett, that's obvious, but allow him to make the mistakes and develop and be like, hey, you are new to this system, where you've got Andy Dalton, who's a seasoned veteran who it might not change anything, but one, Andy Dalton's a bigger dude. I think this is going to be very similar to the Drake May, Jacoby Brissett scenario. With how bad New England's O-line is, do you want the really beefy dude out there? And I'm not saying Andy Dalton's beefy, but he is more muscular and bigger than Bryce Young. Or do you want like the scrawny dude out there who's like 21, 22, 23, who you're worried he's in his first year in the NFL, he gets hit and he looks like a lawn chair that's been folded? Or you throw out the seasoned veteran out there who knows how to take a hit. And I think not only is this, it's going to prevent Bryce Young from getting an injury, but it's going to allow him to learn the offense the right way and not just immediately go into panic mode the second the ball is snapped, or immediately go check down without even going through reads 1, 2, and 3. And I'm not faulting Bryce Young. When you learn on a crappy O line, your mind's immediately going to go, how can I escape? It's going to go check down and then escape, and not read 1, 2, and 3, if you know what I mean.
Yes, definitely.
Speaking of, I guess, passing progressions, there's been Aiden and I aren't high on this sports analyst, and we don't want to call other people out on this podcast, but that's exactly what we're going to do right here.
Who in the hell is Mel Kiper?
Mel Kiper earlier today made some comments that kind of made rounds around the league. Some team social media played into it. I know Jim Harbaugh and one of his defensive backs, Derwin James, commented on this. So obviously, as Aiden and I have mentioned offhand here on the podcast a few times, the passing numbers are not up this year in the NFL. The defenses have adjusted to the passing game, especially with how the Chiefs, I guess, Andy Reid's vertical style brainchild of the air raid and the air Coryell. Like, for those who don't know, air Coryell is Don Coryell was he brought the vertical offense to the NFL in the 70s and 80s, and that's what the original name for the vertical offense was before we've got what we have today. And that's what the Chiefs offense is. And teams have started switching to a more vertical offense, and the defense has figured out how to adjust. And Mel Kiper's not happy about this. He wants to ban essentially he called it cover two, but after he went into more depth, he essentially wants teams to stop giving too high looks. He thinks he made some comment how he hates it how there are safeties 30 yards downfield and it's too high. First of all, I don't think the safeties are 30 yards downfield. I've watched some games and they're like at most 15, if I'm being completely. In prevent scenarios where they're trying to prevent a Hail Mary, yeah, they're going to be 30 yards downfield. What are you going to do? But like, I'm going to let you take a crack at this first, Aiden. If I'm being honest, I'll say one thing really quickly. I mean, granted, video games are completely different than real life, but I like Aiden and I were talking before going on air. The average 5-year-old knows how to break down a cover two from playing Madden for at least 5 minutes. Like, that's probably the easiest coverage to break down and know how to attack.
And I first off, the idea of banning a too high safety look is probably one of the most insane ideas that I've ever heard since the idea of banning the tush push. What's with all these analytical minds just being afraid of analytics when it just shows what one thing works, freaking works? Okay, yeah, we're not getting as many passing yards right now. So what? Like, what do you want? The safeties are supposed to be the last line of defense for a defense. They're the guys that are supposed to be way back. And you want them to not be back 30 yards? That just seems like a good idea for me. If I want do I want my last line of defense to be where if all hell breaks loose, where the opponent's going to be, or do I want them to be up on the line? No, I don't want them to be on the line. The safeties are the insurance claim for the defense. And just having a good insurance policy and hating on a defense for having a good insurance policy, that kind of seems like communism to me. So I'm not going to say that Mel Kiper is a communist who wants people to who wants offenses to all have equal amounts of touchdowns so it could all be entertaining for everyone. That's not how football works, and that's not how the real world works. So if I was Mel Kiper, I would really consider stepping out of the job of analyst right now because to my knowledge, he's never put on a helmet before. But and most of the his claim to fame is predicting who's going to be a good NFL pick. 9 times out of 10, it doesn't turn out the way that he is. So how the hell does he have a job? In my opinion, I don't know. Anyway, that was a little bit of a rant and tirade. That might be cut out, and if it stays in, that's great. But this notion of banning a too high safety look is it's just I'm trying to limit my words right now and keep it PG, but it's just a whiny sissy way of complaining about an issue that is happening right now. The NFL is not all about offensive explosive plays, and even if that's the case, there's still a lot of good offensive players right now. Are we just saying we want to ban the too high look because some NFL teams aren't able to account for it? That doesn't make any sense to me. The NFL is about as high flying offense has about as much uh, good quality offensive play as there's ever been, in my opinion. And just this notion of needing to ban the too high safety look is just it just comes off as complaining to me. And I don't think anybody is going to be taking it seriously.
I don't think so either. And it's just like, he also made some other comments that like the great quarterbacks he grew up watching and idolizing didn't have to do with it. And that's just a
What, Johnny
blatantly
Unitas? Because he's like 65 years old. Who cares? The game changes.
it's also a blatantly false claim too. The quarterbacks he cited that didn't have to go against cover two. I know he alluded to like the offenses don't pass as much as they did in the 80s because of this. One of the greatest offenses of the 70s and the 80s, their passing game was predicated on beating cover two. The Air Coryell offense with Dan Fouts and the Chargers, that whole offense was about exploiting cover two. It was about overloading the deep parts of the field. That's where the verticals offense comes from. And yes, Aiden and I have talked about that defenses have changed in order to beat the vertical offense, but how you beat deep vertical passes is not cover two. So this notion that he thinks this too hot, like cover two, is stopping this is wrong. Yes, teams when they play cover four, which is also out of a too high safety look, cover four stops the vertical offense. And a lot of teams, yes, are playing cover four to stop that Chiefs offense. Yes. But the notion that like cover two hasn't been an issue until lately is just false. Like that's literally how the Chargers, like their first like snap at greatness was everyone in the NFL when they ran zone ran cover two, and they just run four verts and destroy you down the field. They also would attack cover two the other way you do. If the defense starts getting light in the box and playing cover two, you just gash them up the middle and you keep running the ball till they bring that one of those safeties down in the box. Then you hit him with a pass play. That's literally how you do it. It's not that hard. And if he wants to beat cover two looks, not all too high safeties are cover two. Some defenses disguise it. Not all one high safety looks are cover two. They disguise their defenses. Like they do it to confuse quarterbacks. And like you were saying, I feel like this is just, I don't feel like he has anything better to do right now. So he just can't. I feel like he just said this morning just to get media attention, if I'm being honest. Like,
And what are we doing? Giving him media attention. So I'll say this: Mel Kiper won, but this is such a non-conversation that I hate that we even have to have it right now. But no, we should not ban a too high look. Any serious person that tries to propose banning a play is always going to lose respect in my mind, because football is a chess game, and you're going to have to learn how to adapt to other people who just have things that you don't have, and strategically align your offense and your defense to make the plays to account for the differences that persist. And I have nothing else to say other than that, but uh, common Mel Kiper L. So just hate to see it, but that's just the way the sports landscape is going right now. So yeah.
and like you were saying, football is a game like you like scheme around what you have and what you don't have. We don't see Army, Navy, and Air Force complaining that they don't have 300-pound linemen. They just scheme around it,
Yes.
and they have some
Yes.
success. And I feel like that's kind of a good segue to take us into college football, bringing up Army and Navy. And I guess before we get into like I guess our scheduled segment of college, do you have just any initial reactions from the weekend? Was there any results that kind of stood out for you? I mean, I know I have some because it like one team proved me wrong based on how I was feeling about them, but that was my only really initial reaction. I feel like last weekend kind of went business as usual, but I just want to know if you had any interesting things you saw that I might have missed in terms of last weekend's scores.
Uh, just going over a quick summary of what I saw. Georgia, I was very surprised by the dogfight that they were in against Kentucky. They were able to come away with the win, but Georgia definitely should be on watch right now. And I was not very impressed with their showing against Kentucky. Texas had an amazing showing against UT San Antonio. Arch Manning pretty much made his debut this game. With Quinn Ewers coming out, Arch Manning proved himself to be a very strong quarterback, and proved that he is going to be the future for Texas moving forward. I don't know too much about the Quinn Ewers injury, but I know that Texas is in good hands with Arch Manning. But when Quinn Ewers comes back, I do see him taking the starting role again, just because Quinn Ewers is pretty much on his way out right now, and Texas was working fine with him. So if the system isn't broke, don't fix it. But Arch Manning is definitely a future Heisman candidate. It's a little bit. I grant that I will say it's a little bit too much saying it when his basically coming out party was against UT San Antonio, but he showed impressive speed and proved that he has the Manning capabilities and then some. His speed with his ability to throw and make good decisions is something that I think the college football world should be on the lookout for. Uh, Ole Miss Wake Forest was a game that many people looked over, but there's a one news basically main story that's been coming out of it is the fact that Wake Forest doesn't want to play Ole Miss next year. And I actually am erring on the side of Wake Forest on this one. Throughout the second half of the Ole Miss game, Ole Miss would, after any big play from Wake Forest, I did notice that Ole Miss was having very suspicious injuries coming out after a big Wake Forest play, pretty much killing any momentum for Wake Forest. I'm not going to complain that there should be something done. That's the way the game is. But if that's how Ole Miss is going to play, I wouldn't be surprised if the smaller schools don't want to play you next year. So I think it's a no-fault crime, as in Ole Miss played a good game. In the second half, they had some tactics that weren't necessarily clean football, but I'm not going to complain about it. But if you go about that route, don't be surprised if people don't want to play you next year, especially schools like Wake Forest, which should be on the same, not same level as Ole Miss, but they're in the same idea of like the Power Four. Wake Forest definitely wants to get their football branding up. Losing to Ole Miss 40-6 is not a good look for anyone. So I think it was just an interesting story coming away from an otherwise very unremarkable game. Uh, and yeah, I think the last game that I want to talk about from the abroad perspective before we bring it back to North Carolina is Boston College had a very good showing against Missouri. I picked Boston College to win this game. I knew it was a long shot, but Boston College proved that they are a very viable football team and that they are definitely a threat to be seen in the ACC. They went to Missouri and were able to put on a good showing. If I am an Eagles fan, I am definitely not ashamed of this game, and I think Boston College is on the right path. Missouri, to me, however, has proved they're not a top six team. I think there's some weaknesses that need to be addressed. They were able to come away with the win, and I think they're going to be a threat in the SEC, but there's definitely some questions that need to be answered.
Definitely, and I agree. Particularly, I feel like Georgia and Missouri, I came away with more questions than I had answers. The Georgia game, they usually struggle with their first SEC road game. That's something Kirby Smart has kind of harped on. And that's something where he's like, I addressed that with them in practice this week and did not really see a change. So he said he was a little worried about that. My one thing with Kentucky is they had that they could have won that game very easily. I felt like Brock Vandegrift was their quarterback was very hesitant to make certain throws. It was very reminiscent of a Bryce Young. Well, he did make some good decisions. He had some like hard-nosed runs where he escaped pressure and kind of got the first down. But a lot of the passes I saw him make, it was a lot of like average of 2 yards per attempt, or he'd have a man open downfield, but he'd hesitate too long and that window would close. It was just kind of very frustrating stuff to watch. I mean, I wasn't rooting for Georgia to lose, but I was rooting for a good game, and I just want to see both teams play well. And obviously, as the score suggests, offense was not. It was 13-12. There's not a lot of offense. One team that surprised me a lot this weekend after how they've played, and one thing Aiden and I have talked about is this team played two really good teams. They played Boise State, and then they played a really good FCS program in Idaho, which, playing a good FCS team like Aiden and I have discussed on here is suicide. But the one team that really surprised me this weekend was the Oregon Ducks. I watched that game. They looked like a well-oiled machine. And when I say their offense was explosive, it wasn't explosive in like, a 2014 style hurry up, like old Oregons that we've watched that they're lining up to snap the ball before you've even picked your defensive tackles up off the ground. This was just, they were just very clinical. They were lethal. I'm looking for surgical would be a good word. No matter what situation they came in, Dan Lanning and company had the right play. 3rd and 1, they're stopping the run inside all day, speed option to the left. I believe one of their first touchdowns, Dylan Gabriel housed what was the speed option. Like they just knew what to do. Oregon State starts stopping the run. Oregon hits them with a nice finesse pass over the middle. Like it was beautiful to watch. Like, and I know that we don't talk about football as being beautiful to watch. They talk about soccer when they're passing and it's fluid to be beautiful. This is one of the first times I would say a football offense looked just immaculate to watch. It looked like art, just because it was whatever Oregon State threw at them, they just handle it with like just such ease. And I know Oregon State did hang in there for about a quarter or two, but in the second half, Oregon's defense just really stepped up, and that offense just kept working like a well-oiled machine. They are certainly a team that I think are on the rise, and they've kind of found their stride. They've worked out the kinks with their transfer quarterback, and I really think they're going to soar from here on out.
And with the theme of old Pac-12 rivalries getting their last hurrah, I do want to give a shout out to Washington State for pulling off the victory against Washington. Washington State, they played they played a very good game. I did not expect them to win coming in, and they really played with a chip on their shoulder. Them not being a team that's been selected for realignment, and Washington kind of moving on from the Apple Cup, the future of these rivalries like the Apple Cup and the Civil War. They're going to be something that I miss in college football, and it was a weird feeling watching them in the middle of September instead of a cold November. But seeing Washington State pull off the victory against Washington in a neutral site stadium, which I wasn't too fond of. I either want to see it in Washington or in Washington State. I don't want to see it at the Seahawks Stadium. That was kind of weird, but it was a good game and a feel good story for me. I don't have too much, like, I'm not too well versed in either Washington State or Washington, but it was a fun game that I was paying attention to slightly throughout the game, throughout the day, and it was just a good feel good story for me. So shout out to Washington State for pulling off a good win against a rivalry that is definitely up in the air with all the realignment.
Definitely, and I will say that was the only game, the only game outside of NC State where I wanted someone to win. It's not that I hate Washington; I loved their offense last year, like their coaching staff, but it just, I do realize realignment is inevitable, but it just kind of leaves a sour taste in my mouth when I don't have problems with them leaving conferences, but when they abandon those rivalries,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
that's history. That's a school that no matter what conference they're in, they will definitely be down to schedule a game against you. Like I forget. I think Bedlam's still on Oklahoma State, even though they're not in the same conference. I believe that might be still on because I think that would be the cause for the second coming if those two didn't play each other. Like I think
Yeah,
things would get pretty nasty. But I think even Oklahoma fans would be upset about that.
yeah, definitely. But with that being said, we do look forward to week 4 of the college football season. Gareth, what are the games that are sticking out to you, and what are the teams that you were high on, and the teams that you were not, that you think if they were stocked, you would be selling them right now?
Um, well, so I guess stock I'd be buying right now is Oregon. I brought them up. They look like a well-oiled machine. We talked about in the previous segment, the previous episode, how transfer quarterbacks, there's an adjustment period. Like it's just, if you're gonna have a transfer quarterback, you want them for longer than a year. But I think Oregon
No.
has McCall. Yeah, no, that's good guy. But I think that's another point. But if I will say something, if you're gonna get a transfer quarterback, he needs to have several years of eligibility left. just to like work out those kinks. And I
Definitely.
think Oregon has been fortunate to work out those kinks early, and I think from here on out, Dylan Gabriel is going to soar. It's going to look he's going to look good. Now, in terms of I guess other teams I'd watch out for on the up, Syracuse looked really good with Kyle McCord. I wouldn't say they're obviously an ACC contender, but I'd say they're a team that's trending up. Um, Team that's trending down. I mean, App State, they did not look good. It
By
was
the time of filming this, we just saw the Southern Alabama game, and even though like their week 4 game is over, let's talk about week 3 and week 4. They had a okay showing against ECU, but this Southern Alabama game was not good.
it was not. Southern Alabama scored like Southern Alabama scored like what 150 points in the last 2 weeks. He dropped after they got housed the first 2 weeks. South Alabama dropped 87 on some poor like FCS team. They might have even been Division 2, and then they come out tonight and they drop. Lord knows I forget. I already forget how much they dropped on App State tonight. It wasn't pretty. It was they ran all over them. Oh, they dropped 48 on App State. Excuse me, they've scored 150 points in the last 2 weeks. They were pissed.
Damn.
And I know I just thought after the Clemson game, I thought, App State was just the first face to punch. No, I really think App State may not be it this season. And I know Aiden and I were really high on ECU, and I know App State beat ECU last weekend. But when they're running the Oprah offense, like you get a turnover, you get a turnover, you get a turnover. ECU leads the nation in turnovers right now. Their quarterback leads the nation in interceptions. I thought they wouldn't turn the ball over in the App State game because, this trend can't continue. They're not going to be the worst team every game, are they? And they turned the ball over twice, which isn't great. So I'd say they're a stock. Them and App State are definitely stocks I'm selling. I wanted to be high on ECU this season. Like you and I talked about it last episode. You kind of enlightened me to certain things that were going well for them lately, and I had not necessarily paid attention to them as much. But I think after seeing the Oprah offense in person, I'm definitely selling stock. Um, I guess one team I'd buy stock in is Utah with Cam Rising coming back. You're getting your star 7th-year senior quarterback coming back. He's been a Heisman candidate in the past, and that's a nice segue into games I'm looking out for. It's definitely the Utah-Oklahoma State game. I mean, there's the obvious one, Tennessee-Oklahoma, which is where college game day is going, but Aiden and I would save the obvious one. And then obviously one we may talk about, Illinois at Nebraska. We're not sure if this episode is going to be up in time for that. But are there any other games that you're thinking of just off rip? I mean, I hit some of the bigger ones there, but if there's any ones I missed or there's ones that you feel I should have included, just feel free to
Off
jump in
off
here.
rip, I'm going to talk about what I want to talk about right now. And right now, I want to talk about Cal and FSU. If I have a stock, some people might say, "Hey, you got to buy at this certain time or sell at this certain time." FSU, if FSU was a stock, I'm going to wait for them to plummet even more. I think FSU is going to get worse now. But once FSU reaches that bottom, then I'm going to start buying into them. But right now, no, it's going to get worse for FSU. I feel like they're playing against Cal this weekend in a ACC matchup, and I've been paying attention to the social medias and Cal's social media like fan base. I gotta say, it's probably one of the most slept on college football fan bases. I'm sorry, I was not familiar with your game, but Cal has been making some funny memes right now, and they just the swag and the aura that Cal has right now. I think they're going to have a good showing against FSU. And I am not particularly feeling anything about FSU. I believe they're cursed now. Infamously, there was a guy who said that if FSU lost to Boston College, he would eat dog poop out of a red Solo cup with a spoon. He is now off of social media, and we need to find him right now and make sure he eats his dog doo doo because I believe FSU is cursed now, and they will not win a game until this man eats his dog crap. So until I see that video of him eating the dog crap, I'm going to say that FSU is going to lose this game. Anyway, more serious notes aside, this looks to be a very good week in college football, and I'm excited to see the games that will happen. You mentioned before Syracuse and Stanford. This is another Friday night game. Not sure if this is going to air, but by the time it kicks off, but Syracuse McCord has been a very strong quarterback, and I think he is definitely going to be in the running for like an ACC player of the year if he keeps on playing the way he's playing. And Stanford in this ACC match, it's another weird moment with realignment, but I see Syracuse winning this game. Going through the list, I'm excited to kind of bring it to back to the Carolinas. Clemson and NC State. There's a lot of unknown variables with NC State that I'm not too high on right now. And Clemson looks to be like a really good football team after the App State game. But as we said before, App State might not be the best opponent right now. And they had their showing against uh, what was it? They played Georgia and they week one, right? And
Yeah,
they didn't
Georgia. I
have
mean,
to. It wasn't the best showing. I think this is going to be a very interesting noon game to look out for. And I'm on Clemson right now, but there's still a lot of to be answered by both teams right now. Um, just going through other games that I think might be interesting. I think obviously USC and Michigan is going to be a really good Big Ten matchup in Ann Arbor. USC, I'm pretty high on. Michigan did not have a good showing against Texas, and that has left me to not be as high on them right now. So I think USC is going to come away with the win. The first time I believe they're have been playing in the big house for like 66 years. It's been a while since USC has visited Michigan, but I believe that it's going to be a tough fight. But I don't think Michigan has what it takes to make it a close game in the second half. I believe it's going to be close in the first half, but USC is definitely going to pull away in the second half, in my opinion. Just wanted to harp on a little bit. Notre Dame did make a very good a comeback game against Purdue, absolutely smashing them in the mouth. Notre Dame plays Miami of Ohio, and I would not be highlighting this at all if Miami of Ohio was not a MAC team, and hopefully Notre Dame can prove that they can beat a MAC team in South Bend. Miami of Ohio is 2-0. Notre Dame 2-1. In my opinion, there's no shot that Notre Dame completely falls apart like they did against NIU, but I said there's no shot, and upon saying that, you noticed my pause for a little bit. I immediately regretted saying that because I don't know what Notre Dame team's going to show up. So I think that's just going to be a game that we need to keep a look on. I'm high on Notre Dame after the Purdue game, but I don't know what to expect. Uh, just going down the list again, Utah, Oklahoma State. This is going to be a very good Big 12 matchup. We got two top 15 teams going at it against each other in Stillwater, Oklahoma. And I'm going to be high on the away team right now. Utah has proven to be a very good team with a solid pass and running game. and they've just been the more consistent team over the past couple years where Oklahoma State hasn't. So that's why I'm going in high on Utah, but anything can happen. And with it being at Stillwater, it could go either way, but I'm leaning towards Utah on it. And I think the last game that I really want to talk about is probably the Tennessee Oklahoma game. It being at Tennessee, well, no, apologies. It being at Norman, Oklahoma, has is very interesting for a prime time SEC matchup. Uh, I just think it's very intriguing. Two intriguing brands going at it. I'm more leaning towards Tennessee. Oklahoma has uh, a strong has had some strong showings, but nothing that really like sticks out to me like Tennessee has. And I think they're going to come away with the win on that one.
I do agree with you there. I feel like Oklahoma is one of those teams where we really don't know who. I mean, obviously they're ranked, but we really don't know who they are as a team. And I feel like this game is really going to determine how people see them for the rest of the season. I know them being in the SEC, they've got a lot of games like that, but I feel like this game is really going to kind of set the mood for this season based on how it goes. I do agree with you. I do think Tennessee's going to come out away with the win. Their offense, in my opinion, is just too overwhelming. Oklahoma has embarrassed some teams with their offense in the past this season. I just think that they won't be able to keep up. I think it's going to be too much. One game I will go back to is, like you said, the Utah game. I'm very high on Utah as well. Cam Rising is coming back from injury. They kind of struggle without him, but if you're training with a quarterback all off season, he goes down for a few games and he comes back. The offense isn't going to click as well because they don't have their normal signal caller out there. I mean, I believe we touched on this last week. When you're not playing with the usual quarterback, the offense isn't going to click. One game I do think I will sort of disagree on. I know you said Syracuse Stanford might be a good game. I do think, unlike Cal, I do think Stanford may get a rude awakening to the ACC with Syracuse. However, I will
Yeah,
say, like your Michigan game, I do think it'll be close in the first half, but I just think Syracuse is gonna. One thing I've talked about with my dad is when he said in the past when teams have joined the ACC, they get embarrassed in both football and basketball for at least a year, and I do think Stanford's going to come out and get absolutely just smacked. Now, Cal, on the other hand, like you talked about, Florida State, Cal has taken to the ACC like I hope Southern Methodist would have.
yeah,
Because Southern Methodist has not had a good showing. And I know Southern Methodist is in it for the long game. They've talked about Southern Methodist isn't getting any sort of revenue from the ACC TV deal for at least 7 years. And they're doing that just to have a seat at the table. But from what they've said, from their donors, their athletic department's come out and said they've had several $100 million in donations. In just 1 week of them doing their Mustangs Give program, they got $100 million in 7 days.
they got money.
They have the big Dallas oil money, is what it
Yeah,
is.
yeah,
But like I said, that's another stock I'm buying. Cal is, like I just said before, Cal is a team that is taken to the ACC like I would have wanted Southern Methodist to. Their win at Auburn, and I know Auburn's not a good SEC team. I feel like their win at Auburn not only gives them momentum, but I feel like it kind of silenced some ACC haters because it was like, even coming into the ACC, I honestly thought Cal was going to finish below Stanford. And after that Auburn game, I think Cal could honestly be a 7-8 win team in the ACC if they play their cards right, if they play smart.
yeah.
I'm trying to think of another game. Georgia Tech. I do have a hot take on this Georgia Tech Louisville game. I know the game is in what it was formerly known as Papa John's Stadium. I have no clue what it's called now. But I really haven't seen a lot from Louisville this season. I know they've blown out what was it? I know they might have blown out Robert Morris. I don't know. It's some small FCS school that has been good in the past, but I think with how Georgia Tech holds the ball, Georgia Tech was one of the few teams that was able to somewhat keep pace with Syracuse. I do think just with how much they control the ball and just I don't even know what type of running offense it is. Aiden and I dubbed it smash and dash, just from Smash and dash is a term Aiden and I used to describe an offense we had on one of the previous NCAA football games, but I don't even know whether to call it a gap or a zone run scheme because they do everything. They just come out and just freaking hit you in the mouth and just run you to death until an obvious passing situation. I will say another game I'm interested in is the Carolina JMU game. A lot of Sunbelt teams have been talking a lot of trash lately about how Power Five teams don't want to come play them. Well, they got what they want. I don't know if the game's in Chapel Hill or not, but I feel like
Games in Chapel Hill. JMU does not look as strong. They lost a lot to the transfer portal. So the reason why I didn't highlight the game as much is I don't expect as strong as a JMU team as we were used to last year. JMU looked like one of the best group of five schools in the nation last year. And that's not the same team that they are fielding this year. They've lost a lot in their coaching staff. And granted, they have been getting a little bit back in the transfer portal, but I expect Carolina to use this game as another opportunity to answer some of the questions that have been arising with injuries that have come up, and as conference play starts and the season really gets underway, UNC is going to need to find answers on who is going to be the main people that will step up and really lead this team to good. Potentially, I feel like it could go either way. I think it could be an over 10 win season, or with just the way that UNC has been winning at times, I feel like it could. There's a instance where UNC would be lucky to make a bowl team, make a bowl game. Pitt looks like a very strong team that's going to be coming up next week. Duke, a lot of strong ACC teams are on the schedule. And I think UNC has the ability to beat those teams, but it's going to boil down to how UNC is able to kind of get these issues hammered out against JMU. I think it's going to be an interesting game, but I do think UNC will do what it needs to get done and go into conference play undefeated.
yeah, and I do think it's important that like while as much as I find the Sun, I used to be a big Sun Belt proponent, but I feel like with how much they've been trying to beef with the ACC, we don't need to pay it mind because we don't want to be known as a Power Four conference that is beef with the Group of Five conference. That's just probably not a rap we want to have. Like, I don't care. We could. The only Group of Five conference that I was really okay with us beefing with was the Mountain West in basketball. Like that was a bit that like they're at least good at basketball. Like the Mountain West could argue they could have an argument for saying, hey, they want to have power conference consideration, which they got in basketball and got embarrassed. So back to the Group of Five with you. And I do think this like the Carolina game could like if you really blow the doors off them could kind of shut the door on this kind of like ACC teams are too scared to play us. We're not. You're just not worth our time.
I mean,
Like,
I don't know where this notion is coming from because, like for the past couple of years, like UNC has been playing some belt. Like they played App State. The past couple of times they played App State, they've won. They've been close games. I'll give them that, but UNC has won those games. And I'll always have respect for the Sun Belt, Sun Belt, Fun Belt, but the main powers of the Sun Belt, the App States, and well, we thought JMU was going to be a Sun Belt power. Turns out like they're not as like they've lost a lot to the transfer portal. I feel like there's a change in the power hierarchy of the Sun Belt, and there's just going to be some more changes in the structure of like who are the it teams, and the media is going to be a little bit slow to pick up on it. I feel like the media is still like picking up on the fact that App State is not as strong as once thought, or they're not the media darling that everyone loves them to be. But I will always enjoy tuning into a good Sun Belt game. They're always fun. I never want to. I know you might have some differences of opinion, but I always like the kind of smack talk that some of the lower group of five teams have with Power Four teams because it adds fun to the game. It adds people to watching the games. I'll never crap on anyone who supports a team from the MAC. MACtion is remains to be elite, and I can't wait till the season progresses and we get to talk about more MACtion. I want a podcast just dedicated to MACtion itself, but the I say the only like group of five team that I actually just don't want any conversation with and like this smack talking would be Conference USA, and that's just because it's probably one of the more weaker conferences given like all that's happened in a realignment, and it's just a who's who of just teams that are struggling to like make a name for themselves in college football. But I'll always give my begrudging support to the Sun Belt because Sun Belt Fun Belt is good for college football in general, and uh, they make for some very entertaining games.
Oh no, and I meant no disrespect to the Sun Belt because where where are you gonna find two teams like there are some obscure Sun Belt games that Aiden and I have turned on sometimes where it's like two teams no hope of making a bowl game and it's like Hail Mary and you think it was like the like college football playoff with the reaction they get out of like a Hail Mary to beat someone. Or like the Sun Belt, there's just like Aiden said, Sun Belt Fun Belt, a lot of just fun games happen there. It was just a lot of fun games. But no, and I guess with that, I guess with the UNC game, I guess we can go more depth into like I guess our teams like if you said for UNC that they just kind of need to take care of business this weekend. Is there anything else you think is key to the game, or is that just kind of they just need to kind of need to take care of business and just blow the doors off of them?
They just need to punch them in the mouth first quarter. I was not able to watch the UNC NC Central game because it was not available on any streaming platform or YouTube TV that I own because it was only on ESPN Plus, which I do not have. But I was paying attention to the game, and the first and second quarter, they were just not uh, taking NC Central seriously. But they were able to make the separation in the second half, and I was able to watch some reruns and just some highlights of the game. And I feel like at the end of the day, it's just going to be UNC needs to have the next man up mentality and just be ready to uh, just punch JMU in the face. JMU still is 2-0, and I from what I've seen, I don't think they're the same team that they were last year. But we have to treat them like they like a team that needs to be handled and just taken care of in the first quarter. Um, Harrell is, I feel like he has room to not improve. He's been had some very good stats. 20 for 35, 275 yards. Like he has solid stats at quarterback. I feel like this is going to be a good game for him to really step up and really prove his worth. And Hampton, I expect a big game from him. Big rushing plays are going to be the keys to success and really uh, putting UNC in a good position going into week 5.
I agree. I feel like you said, with an opponent like JMU, the key is just they're going to be looking to get under your skin and make you uncomfortable all game. If you can go out there and hit them in the mouth early, that's going to kind of deter that. And I guess just playing their game. I mean, Harold, like as UNC pulled away in the last game, they kind of found their stride in the passing game because I know I was able to watch a little bit of it on my illegally streamed somewhere. Uh, UNC didn't look bad in the first half. It was just they'd kind of pat her out. They just absolutely maul them, and then NC Central would put together like a few lucky stops. It'd be like a miscue or here or there. But I feel like if UNC can be clinical and even just be like you said, take them seriously, I feel like it'll go their way. And I feel like that's kind of for NC State's game at Clemson, that's kind of like the key to it. One thing I liked, I know it was Louisiana Tech, but in the second half, I have not seen us move the ball like that at all this season. And I'm not blaming it on Grayson McCall. I think it's similar to the conversation I kind of alluded to with Brock Vandegrift for Kentucky in the Georgia game. Grayson McCall mentally is still the same quarterback, but he's not there physically. He knows the right decision to make, but he's too hesitant. The one thing that I liked with Bailey is he was just he was less gun shy. I know his second pass was an interception, but from there on out, he was hitting throws that McCall would have ignored. He was trying to fit the ball into tight windows, and I feel like with how starved we've been for offensive production the past 2 years, we kind of need that. And with him being a true freshman, it simplifies the play call. And I do think that's been one of Anai's weaknesses is he's tried to make the play call a little bit too overcomplicated, and he's gotten cute at times, which is what got us into trouble against Western Carolina. We try to get too cute against Tennessee at times. It's just I feel like if we play the game smart and just be ourselves, keep the play call simple, let CJ cook. CJ's going to make freshman mistakes. He's a true freshman. He's going to make freshman mistakes. We've got to live with that. And we have to be okay with him making a mistake. Because McCall, another big thing I forgot to mention, McCall's out this week as well with an injury. He's out. CJ Bailey is the starter. True freshman. He's the first NC State true freshman to start a road game since Phillip Rivers way back in the day, who ironically his first start was against Clemson in Death Valley. We did not win that game, but he had some pretty impressive stats. He threw for almost, I think, it was either 275 or 375 and like 4 touchdowns. NC State, I believe, still lost that game, but that's a pretty impressive showing from a freshman. And if he can have any similar numbers to that tomorrow, I'll be happy. But I know that's not realistic to expect him to throw for 300, 400 yards. But I do think one of the big keys is, and I'm a big proponent of this, I don't hate on pocket passers, but my one thing that will criticize an eye for not using is Grayson McCall's running ability. He's going to need to utilize CJ's running ability this weekend. He's going to need to make the Clemson defense play 11v11. If you don't utilize your quarterback's running ability, you are essentially saying, hey, we'll play 10v11. We'll play outmanned. No, we need to make Clemson guard every single player on the field and make them assignment football is not the right word because that's what you play when you play the options. You play assignment football. You're responsible for him. You're responsible for him. But I guess that's what I'm saying. We need to make Clemson guard everything. We don't need to be too one-dimensional. I talked about this last week, and if one thing's not working, try and supplement it with another. If the pass isn't there, supplement it with the run. If the run's not working, don't run the ball onto the line 37 times for a 1-yard gain. And yes, this is a podcast where we are two run the ball junkies. Like we loved when the Georgia Tech coach was asked in the press conference how he beat Florida State. He didn't say how he just goes run the damn ball. That's all he said in the press conference. Every question about how he beat Florida State, run the damn ball is all he said.
Run the ball.
And outside of that, I feel like it's a rivalry game, Textile Bowl. Got to have a good showing. We haven't won in Death Valley in 22 years. I feel like if we're going to change that, we're going to have to, like I said, make Clemson play 11v11, keep the play call simple. I'm not saying do like just very generic stuff. Like if you want to throw in some more like deeper level stuff, do it. But there's no reason to get cute here. It's Clemson. We've got a quarterback who's got all the physical traits you want, and we're developing those mental traits like the processing and the development, just how to be a quarterback. The physical stuff is there. We need to utilize that to our advantage. Now, am I saying do the Jimbo Fisher and just 2014 have an athletic quarterback style? Absolutely not. We saw how that experiment went, and that was not good. But no, I think similar to Carolina, if NC State just plays their game, tries to limit mistakes, and doesn't get cute with it, I feel like we can make it a close game or even pull off the win. Now I'm trying to think. Is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything of note, or you think that's kind of a wrap for today?
You know what? I say I want to use this time just to, as we're signing out, I just want to give a quick and very brief run through of the MMA world and UFC. Uh, Hang on one second. Let me just pull up everything. Right. So as we're signing out, I just wanted to give a quick and brief takes on UFC 306. I was able to watch it very legally. 306 was at the Sphere, and it was a very interesting and amazing visual spectacle. I really like how they utilize the Sphere, and I definitely think it's going to be a good venue to use in the future. I'm not sure how they would use the gimmick in the future. I really liked how they were able to utilize different visual aspects to convey the story of Mexican fighting and just some very interesting visuals. The card itself was not the strongest, but I do want to take away, point out some very important fights. One fight that I got wrong in my prediction, I didn't say it on air, but Marab was able to pull off the victory against Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley's reign as UFC champion is over, and he is now out with a hip injury and will be going into surgery now. That was something that Sean came out very slow, and it was not his best showing, and I think there was some talks that he actually won round 1, 3, and 5. I didn't score the fight that way. I think Marab won. A lot of people are very concerned with what the future of the division is going to be with Marab as the champion. I think Marab is not the most interesting fighter, but calling him a boring fighter is going to be doing him a great disservice. Another fight that I really want to point out, Valentina Shevchenko was able to get the belt back from Alexis Grasso. Valentina Shevchenko previously was lost the belt to Alexa, and in their rematch they tied. And Valentina Shevchenko proved that she was one of the more technical fighters and has a arsenal of great attacks that she can use against anyone, and her age is not limiting her in her ability, and she was able to take the unanimous victory with a clean scorecard of 50-45 from all three judges. That was a very impressive showing, in my opinion, an absolute. I did not expect it to go that much in her favor, but I'm very glad to see that she one. And the last fight that I want to talk about is Diego Lopez defeating Brian Ortega. Diego Lopez, if he is a stock, I am buying him right now. I believe he is the future of the UFC. And this win against Brian Ortega was very impressive, in my opinion. He was able to go away with the unanimous decision, scoring 30-26, 30-27, and 30-27. All three judges agreed that he won all three rounds. One of the judges believed that he I took Brian Ortega to the absolute wash in like round two, which was very impressive. Both fighters, Diego Lopez and Brian Ortega, are very technical jujitsu experts, but Diego Lopez just proved that he has what it takes to really make a run in the UFC and just probably bring back a renaissance of technical grappling to the UFC, which I'm very excited for. I'm a big grappling guy, and any UFC grappler that's able to really put a spotlight on the technicalities of grappling is going to be a fighter that I will always watch. But those were just my brief takeaways from UFC 306. Other than that, it wasn't the strongest of cards, but I feel like those three fights are very important in showing the future of what the UFC is going to be in the next couple months. And I'm excited for 307. And in the future, I heard 309 should have John Jones returning finally. And I'm very excited to see that. I've been very disappointed with John Jones being out for a good while, basically sitting on the heavyweight title and not allowing the title to not relinquishing his title just because he wants to fight against Stipe. But if John Jones finally gets this fight with Stipe, which I'm really hoping for, I do hope that he stays around and doesn't retire. If he does retire, I do think this is going to hurt his legacy because he just sat around and waited for the Stipe fight and basically didn't didn't allow any real fights in the heavyweight division for his quote unquote heavy weight title run. His heavyweight title run has been, in my opinion, probably going to be a mark on his resume. It's almost like Michael Jordan with the Wizards. He's only had one fight against Cyril Gane, and that was a very good fight for Jones, but he has not fought since then. And that was like back in I think it was early 2023. It's been over a year since he last fought, and the fact that Dana White is still claiming that he's the pound for pound pound for pound number one fighter in the UFC. I'm not the biggest fan of just because he's been so inactive. But that concludes my UFC segment, and that concludes all my thoughts that I have right now, Gareth.
Yeah, I was definitely curious to hear your take on the Sean O'Malley fight. That was definitely one where I thought he was. I don't watch as much MMA and UFC as Aiden. I'm trying to get into it. I remember watching one of Sugar Sean's first. That's what they call him, is Sugar Sean. He's like the pink hair. I remember watching one of his first fights over first one of his bigger, not first fight, but one of his first bigger fights last summer. He's from one of my fellow swim buddies' hometowns, and I remember we stayed up to watch the fight, and he was pretty impressive. And also, kind of like you said, surprised. I only got to watch the highlights on social media, but I was kind of shocked he wasn't able to come out on top. But like you said, he came out with that hip injury, which is very unfortunate. That's something you don't like to see, especially with how good of a fighter he is. But yeah. I think that's going to do it for us tonight on Tobacco Road and Abroad. Thank you for listening in, whether you're listening on Spotify, YouTube, please don't take us down, or the Apple Podcast app. Thank you very much. Make sure you go over and subscribe to that or follow us on Spotify. And we'll be launching an Instagram soon, so you can follow us on there and we can cut up our funniest moments and post them there. But thank you again for listening and have a good night.